Well, hey, everybody, welcome to church. And welcome to the final week of the series that we've called The Way Home. I'll tell you more about that in a second, but first, let me just look in the camera, say hello to our church family gathered around what we call Journey City, our region, and just is an amazing gift. I never take it for granted before walking out here today, just enjoying worship together and then coming out here. I'm so reminded of what a gift it is to be able to gather in our church family in Hockessin and Middletown, here in the room in Newark, everyone joining us online. I wonder, can we just give God thanks for our church family? It's an amazing thing. Yeah. And we are in the final week of this series that we've called The Way Home, which is around 3 stories that Jesus told about things that were lost being found. And whatever our background with church or faith, there's something underneath each of these stories that brings out a feeling we can all relate to, and that is the feeling of being lost, being disconnected, being sort of out of our usual way of making sense of the world. And I don't mean physically lost necessarily, although if that's happened to you, you know how disconcerting that can be, but emotionally lost, relationally lost. And then really at the end of the day, we are spiritually lost. Jesus made the case that all of us who don't know God in a real way are lost. No matter how much it looks like we're winning on the outside, no matter how much it would appear that we are successful externally, we are lost on the inside. And so the first story, if you're here week 1 of the series, and if not, I would encourage you to go back and watch these. You can get caught up to speed on the first 2 installments. But the first story Jesus tells is about a man who has 100 sheep. And one of them gets lost, so the man goes and searches for the sheep that's lost until he finds it. Actually, I'm wearing a hoodie today designed by one of the students in our church called the Lost Sheep Co. How cool is that? So, thank you, Maddox. This is the first story that Jesus tells. We sang about at our locations a few moments ago. And then the second story is about a woman who has 10 silver coins, and one is misplaced. So she lights a lamp and she sweeps until she finds it. We talked about that last Sunday. And so today is the third story. So near the end of 9th grade, I skipped, I think 34 or 35 days in 9th grade. Yep, I was that kid. And near the end, I skipped a day of school. And I had 2 friends with me, and we borrowed a canoe and paddled across the St. Lawrence River, where I grew up in Canada, paddled across from the Canadian side into the U.S. because why not? So my buddies brought beer, and on the way back, when they were good and sloshed, they decided it would be fun to try and tip the canoe. So they're like, doing this back and forth in the canoe. We're in the middle of the St. Lawrence River. It's about 100 feet deep, fast current. I was not a strong swimmer. We did not have any life jackets. And I thought I was going to die in the middle of that river, a thief and a truant. So I started yelling at them, like, if you tip this canoe, I'm going to kill you, just yelling all these things that I, very threatening as my 94-pound self. And all the while I was yelling at them, I was whispering promises to God. I can remember just telling God, like, if you get me out of this, I will serve you forever. I mean, if you just help me get back to shore safely, I will never skip school again. I will never do this again. All these promises. We made it back to shore, and I promptly forgot all of those promises I made to God. I just wasn't ready to turn my life over to Him yet. And I think a lot of us have found ourselves in a bad situation at some point. Maybe not in the middle of a river, but in the middle of a relationship that we knew was probably not the best idea, the healthiest thing when we started it. And we just, one thing, led to another, and we didn't go in a different direction. We found ourselves in a mess. Some of us have found ourselves in a job that paid well, but ended up leading us away from our values, or an addiction that made us feel good until it didn't anymore. Or just this slow, steady drift. That's some of us. Like, it's not some big dramatic thing. We have drifted away from what matters and who matters. And at some point we realize this isn't who I thought I would become. And we've worn out everything that was supposed to make us happy. And we find ourselves in this moment where it really is a crossroads moment. What will we do with it. And that's what happens in Jesus' third story, okay? It's the book of Luke in the New Testament of the Bible. If you're new to the Bible, it's Luke 15. It's one of my favorite chapters in the Gospels because of these three stories. And here's how Jesus starts the third one. He says, a man had two sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. Okay, so dad's rich. And when he dies, 2/3 of what he has is going to go to his oldest son. 1/3 is going to go to his youngest. That is the custom at the time. But the younger son can't wait. He wants his share now. And this may not seem like a big deal to us, but I promise you, the people who are listening to Jesus give this story, share this story on this particular occasion, that he would have been shocked because you just didn't do that. It was a very different time when Jesus told this story, and no son would go to his father and say, give me your inheritance now. First of all, he would be taking his life in his own hands. You didn't talk to your dad that way. It's just not how it worked. And then secondly, it would be considered the ultimate form of disrespect, because essentially what he's saying is, Dad, I wish you were dead. That's the only way you got the inheritance. So he's saying, Dad, you would be worth more to me as a father dead than you are alive. I want my share of the inheritance now. And no father would agree to this, is the flip side of the coin, because fathers had all the power when Jesus told this story. Kids had no rights. Father had the wealth, and he could easily just write this son off and be done with him. But this dad seems to know that sometimes kids have to learn things for themselves. So a few days later, this younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all his money in wild living. He skipped school, stole a canoe, and paddled to a distant land. You understand what I'm saying? Right away, we see that this story is different from the first two stories that Jesus tells. And again, I encourage you to go back, watch the messages, read in Luke 15 those first two stories, because this one's very different. First one is about a sheep who wanders off. This is not a sheep who wanders off. This is not like just the son kind of had a bad moment. The second one's about a silver coin that gets misplaced in its owner's house. This is not that. This is an act of deliberate rejection. So the first story, we feel some compassion for the sheep, right? We talked about this. Sheep are stubborn. They're not the smartest animals. I actually got to see 2 sheep yesterday. We took our son to a farm near us, and we saw the sheep. And one of the sheep, while I was there, had a coughing fit. And I was like, what's up with that? And the owner was like, oh, he just keeps eating the hay, and he eats it wrong, and he coughs all the time. And I was like, give that sheep some Mucinex, get that. That's why I'm not a farmer. Like, take 2 of these, call me in the morning. But sheep are stubborn, so we feel compassion for the sheep in the first story. Silver coin, it doesn't have a will of its own. It gets misplaced in the owner's house. We feel like, man, it's, really the owner needs to get involved here and find this coin. We talked about that. This is a deliberate act of rejection and resentment. This guy must have hated his dad. It's the only explanation. To turn his back on his father and his home and his family. He knows what he's doing, and he does it anyway. And some of us have done this. We're not like the sheep, actually. We're not like the silver coin. We're more like this son. We've become frustrated with our families, with God, maybe with church, and we walked away, and in a deliberate act of rejection, we said, I don't believe that anymore. I don't buy that anymore. That's not for me anymore. I don't have to do that anymore. And we set out and we chased after something or someone that promised us happiness until it left us empty. Or maybe for some of us it hasn't happened yet, but let me make a prediction. And it eventually leads us somewhere like here. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. Now, Jesus often used physical things to explain spiritual realities, okay? That was, especially in his parables, his stories, that's usually what he's doing. He's taking something very ordinary. It may not seem ordinary to us, but a lot of the details in these stories would have been very understandable to his original audience. And he uses these very ordinary things to give us a picture of spiritual reality. So when he says that the young man wasted all his money, we get a sense that Jesus is actually saying something deeper, which is that living life away from the Father and community is a waste. No matter how successful it seems for a while, that living a life that rejects God and rejects community that's healthy and helpful for us, that eventually leads us into a place where we're wasting our lives. We're wasting our potential. When he says the young man began to starve, he's saying that our souls can get so empty, so unsatisfied and restless. Again, some of us have felt it, that things we never thought we would do start to look good to us, like eating what's been offered to the pigs. And there's another layer under this, of course, because Jesus' audience was Jewish. And so for any Jewish man, it was not kosher to be around pigs, much less to take care of pigs, much less to eat the same food as pigs. So this guy, he is at rock bottom. The money's gone, the friends are gone, the fun's gone, and he's at rock bottom. And he's doing things he never thought he would do. I'm not going to ask you to lift your hand at our locations today, but I wonder how many of us found ourselves at some point in life doing things we never thought we would do. I never thought I would be that person. I never thought I'd lie like that. I never thought that substance would take over my life. I thought it was just a way to blow off steam. I was just having fun. I never thought that relationship would lead me there. I never thought having multiple sexual partners would get me into this place where there was such an emptiness inside of me and I just couldn't get my next fix. I couldn't get it fast enough and it didn't fulfill me enough. I never thought I would live like that. So I wonder what are the people listening to Jesus thinking right now? Imagine with me. What are they thinking? What's going through their minds? I wonder if some of them are thinking, why doesn't the Father just go find his son? He's rich, right? He has the resources. He could just go find his son. Remember, in the first two stories, the man searches for the sheep. In the woman, in the second story, she goes sweeping throughout her entire house, lamp lit, broom, going back and forth until she finds the coin. Everybody's expecting that they're either expecting that this son's gone too far, the dad wants nothing to do with him, or they're expecting it's like the first two stories where the father goes, man, I've got the resources. I'm going to track my son down. I'm going to grab him by the ear. I'm going to pull him out of that canoe. And I'm going to take him back to where he belongs. But this dad does nothing. As far as we can tell, nothing. He just waits. I'm telling you, this story is different than the first two because this son is different. So what is the dad waiting for? Jesus says he's waiting for this. When he, the son, finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am, dying of hunger. When he came to his senses, he remembered what it was like at home. How do we get back to the God who created us and loves us? Well, it starts here. Wake up. The dad knows, man, I can't just go drag my son out of the pig pen or 6 months later he'll be back there. He needs a crossroads moment. And if what I was going to say to him was going to work, it would have by now. He's going to have to say something to himself. Change begins when we start seeing clearly. When we admit that the life we've been trying to build without God isn't working. We have chased after what we thought would make us happy. And by the way, no judgment. I did it. I feel like, I've got some experience in the field. I have experience in the field of sinning. So no judgment, but we we chase after what we think will make us happy, and then eventually we find ourselves either waist deep in consequences, or for some of us, maybe the bottom hasn't fallen out for us. But if we're honest, our souls are starving. Like maybe we have the money and the title and the car and the whatever, the house, the relationship. Maybe everything seems to be functionally working well. And so we are at a loss to explain why the more we accumulate and accomplish in this life, the emptier we become. Our bodies aren't starving, but our souls are. And something's got to happen. We've got to wake up. And when the son wakes up to where he really is in life, well, here's the next step. He says, I will go home. I'm going to go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me back as a hired servant. My life isn't working. I can't fix it on my own. So here's my plan. First, I'm going to wake up to how life really is for me. I'm going to stop lying to myself. I'm going to stop pretending. I'm going to stop going through the motions. I'm going to stop saying maybe it'll be better tomorrow, because now I know it won't. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to head home. That's my plan. It's really simple. Wake up, come to my senses, and then head home. Think about that walk home. I mean, just imagine it with me. He's tired, he's worn out, he's starving, and he's wondering, what am I going to face when I get there? Judgment? A locked door, an angry speech? Will my father and my family even still be there? And then again, think about the people listening to Jesus tell this story, because some of them are far from God, right? Some of them are far from home. Others of them think they're close to God, but they're really just religious on the outside. They haven't been changed on the inside. And none of them actually know what God is really like. So it's maybe easy for us, we kind of gave away the plot twist in worship today about God's love, but the people listening to Jesus, they don't know. All they've heard about God is, man, he's ready to stomp you, man. Like he's so angry and so disturbed, and you're so sinful that there's no hope for you. That's all they know about God. Just like a lot of us, they assume they know what God's really like, but they don't actually know. And some of us are there. We assume that God would judge us. In fact, some of us act so tough when it comes to faith. We're like, I don't need that. That's a crutch. It is a crutch, and your leg is broken. That's what Jesus would say. It is a crutch. And can I just be bold here today? The people with the crutches are not the ones who look funny. The people limping around like they don't need one are the people who look funny. Like 7 people here in Newark were like, I think I can clap. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not being unkind. I'm not. I'm just telling you. I'm not ashamed of how much I need God. And that crowd listening to Jesus, they're wondering, like, will God even still be there if I go home? Some of us, that's where all of our toughness comes from, is down on the inside. We're scared to death that if we turn to God, he would reject us. So we reject him first. It's our way of trying to control the situation. But that's not what God is like at all. Jesus wants us to know God is like a dad, a really good dad. So he returned home to his father. And while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. I want you to remember that sons didn't ask for their inheritance early. You just didn't do that. And dads didn't run to embrace sons who had turned their backs on them. But this one does. He sees his son coming, well, he's still a long way off, and he runs to him. Sometimes when we take what God has given us and we waste it in this world, God doesn't beat down our door. Sometimes he simply waits, and he'll wait a long time. He waits for us to come to our senses. But the moment God sees a son or daughter in the distance, heading his direction, heading home, he runs to us. And this is the plan. Wake up, come to our senses, realize and admit the life we're trying to live without God, the life we're trying to build without God, the ways in which we've been ignoring God, it isn't working. So let's head home to the Father and to family and to community and to what will really fulfill us. And when we get there, we will find grace. That's what's at the heart of Jesus' story. That's the path. So his son said to him, he had this speech rehearsed. Remember, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, which is really interesting. I don't have time to unpack this, but the son recognized that he had sinned against God and against his family. And man, I have been so struck these past few years, and I think what happened in our world a few years ago in 2020 was a glaring reminder of how much we need community. And this son says, hey, I've sinned against God, but it didn't end there. I didn't just love God, I didn't love my neighbor as myself. I've sinned against community, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. Remember, this is his perspective. But his father said to the servants in the middle of his son's speech, quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf we have been fattening. I was going to do that as a visual today, but the team said it wouldn't be a good idea. I really did, bro. I was like, what if we must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and is now returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found. There's a man in our church who knows what that feels like. So there is a man in our church who believed in God when he was a kid, but he lost his way. And later in life, he got married, but then his marriage fell apart and depression took hold of him, and alcohol became his go-to. And he was trying to take care of his kids and slipping more and more into this dark place. And then one day at the gym, he met a guy from the journey who didn't judge him, but just listened to him and kept inviting him here. And finally, one weekend he came and he sat at the back, and something shifted on the inside. He gave his life over to God, and then he asked God to restore his family, and God did. And a few months later, he and his wife, who had started to date again, they got back together, and she came to church with him, and now they are married again and raising their family together. Why? Because this is the path. Wake up. Head home. Find grace. Wake up. Head home. Find grace. Quick! Bring the finest robe. Grab the ring, get the Reeboks, sear the ribeyes. Remember, the son is like, he's all bedraggled, he's worn out, he's tired. He comes up, he can't even look his father in the eyes. His father has just run to him, embraced him, and kissed him. And the son says, okay, I rehearsed this the whole way. Every step I said, I'm not worthy to be a son anymore. And I promise you, if you get me out of this, I will serve. And the father says, all I needed to hear was the sound of your footsteps coming home. And the father yells to all the staff in the household, and he says, hey, it's time for a feast, because my son who is dead is now alive. He was lost, but now he's found. The robe says you're forgiven. The ring says you belong. The sandals say, I see how far you walked to get here. And the feast says, I want everyone to know this is my son and he's home. And here's my favorite part. You ready? Here it is. Thank you very much. So the party began. Come on, somebody. For everyone who thought the story would end in judgment, Jesus says, no, it ends in joy. God's not like you thought he was like. He's not who you thought he was. He is not distant and uninterested, and he is not present and full of judgment, can't wait to stomp you. No, God is a holy God who loves you and hates what's ruining you. And all he needs to hear is the sound of your footsteps headed home, and he'll run to you. Anybody like to party? Anybody? Come on. That's what got some of us in trouble, right? Pre-Jesus. We were looking for a good time. We were hoping for a celebration. We wanted community. We were like, raise a glass. And then someone told us a lie. That when you find Jesus, the party ends. Jesus said, no, when you come home, it finally starts. Except you don't wake up the next morning going, why did I do that with them again? The son, just like many of us, he ran away. He ran away from God. He ran away from home. Why does Jesus add that line at the end of the story? So the party began. It's actually not quite the end of the story, but you're going to have to wait a few weeks. We're going to come back and I'll give you the very end of the story. But why does he add this line? So the party began. Can you see? So if you read Luke 15 at the very beginning, there were a bunch of notorious sinners. We talked about it week 1. They were listening to Jesus teach. And then there were a bunch of really like smug religious people, full of pride, lots of frowns for the glory of God. They were listening to Jesus teach. I wonder if when Jesus said, so the party began, he looked at those notorious sinners and went, I got you. The moment we run out of everything that we were told would make us happy, and we turn our back on a world that cannot satisfy us, and we turn our hearts toward God, real life begins. For many of us, we're so into instant gratification that we are looking for something that feels good immediately, right? And that's what messes with us about faith. Can I tell you something? 6 months after I was in that canoe, sailing across the St. Lawrence River about to die, promising God all these things, Jesus came into my life in a real way. Listen, this fall will be 34 years of following Jesus. But you got to hear me. It was good back then. It's great now. I just can't tell you how much better. Every party you're used to gets worse and worse the longer you do it. But when you give your life over to God, it gets better and better and better the longer you follow Jesus. And this is what church is. Church is a place where the Father's heart is on full display. It's a place where prodigal sons and daughters can come home, and we don't even let them finish their I'm not worthy speech. We grab a robe, in our case, a baptism t-shirt, and we put it on their shoulders because this is what it's about, people waking up, heading home, finding grace. It's why we give, to buy robes and rings and sandals. I can't wait to get to heaven and see the robes and rings and sandals I purchased with my generosity for the glory of God. You say, I don't know if I believe that. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It's why we serve. It's the why behind our J team. Because every week, hundreds of us hear the Father whisper, quick, go set up your location, go park cars, go make coffee, go help kids learn to know God, love God, and live like He says. Go make sure that students know that there is a God who can help them overcome their anxiety and their depression and their loneliness. Go play an instrument, go sing, go make a light work, go work behind the scenes, go lead a J group, because today somebody's coming home. Today, I hear footsteps in the distance. Make November your month to come to Plugged In if you haven't yet. RSVP, get on the J team. Someone's coming home this week. And when we get to the end of the story in a few weeks, by the way, we're going to take a break for a little something called At the Movies. It's not a break. It's going to be amazing. But when we get to the end of the story in a few weeks, I'll show you what happens if you don't join the party. It's not good. If you look down your nose at what God is doing and you're selfish and you forget that you promised to serve when He saved you, it's not good. But man, there is no life like ironing robes and straightening sandals and polishing rings and marinating flank steak. So that sons and daughters can come home. When I was 15 years old, 6 months after that day in the river, I met Jesus. And I came home, and God, He saw me coming. And He put a robe on my shoulders, and He put a ring on my finger, and He put sandals on my feet. And heaven celebrated loud enough for hell to hear. So if you're lost, wake up. Come to your senses. You're not you when you're lost. Head home. Home to the Father. Home to spiritual family. Find grace. And once you found it, don't forget what Jesus did for you when you were lost. And don't forget that you promised Him, if you get me out of this, I will serve you the rest of my life. Next Sunday, we're going to start at the movies, all of our locations. Man, I have such a sense of expectation this year. And by the way, we pulled out all the stops. It's going to be amazing. You want to know what the movies are? Come to At the Movies. I don't even tell my family. They get so mad at me. But it's going to be amazing. And we're going to tell stories, kind of like Jesus did, using ordinary things that we all are familiar with to point the way to spiritual truth. You'll never have an easier opportunity to bring somebody. You want to come to church and watch movies and eat free popcorn? So bring somebody. And can I encourage you? Let's keep the robes ready. Let's keep the sandals ready. Let's keep the rings ready. Let's be ready for the party to begin. If Jesus has changed your life and you're so glad you know Him, I wonder all of our locations, would you just lift up your hand, hold it up high? We're going to pray a prayer of thanksgiving today. Father, we honor You. We think about Your reckless love. Religious people might frown at that word sometimes, but God, it is. There's no explaining Your love for us. We did not earn it. We don't deserve it. But through Christ, You gave Yourself away. And now we're saved, we're changed, we're transformed. You see us as sons and daughters. We're not slaves, but we are servants by choice. Fill us with Your passion. Help us live like You in this world, like sons and daughters. While you let the Holy Spirit speak to you for a moment more, maybe for you today, all of our locations, listen, maybe this is personal for you. You're the one coming to your senses right now. And you're the one who's worn out everything that you thought would make you happy. And maybe you assumed that you couldn't come to God. Maybe you assumed you had to intellectually understand everything about God. Or maybe you assumed that God would judge you, that you weren't qualified. All God needs to hear is the sound of your footsteps. And if you're coming to your senses today and He's calling you home, today can be your day. You put your faith in Jesus and begin following Him. So I want everyone to join me again. Just open your heart up to God. And if that's you today, if you would say, today's my day, right where you are, I want you to whisper out a prayer of faith, something like this. Jesus, today I surrender my life to you. I hold nothing back. Jesus, I believe that you died to forgive my sins and that through you I can come home. Save me today. I'm yours. And if that's you, while everyone around you stays focused on God, if you would say, I want to be included in that prayer, I'm putting my faith in Jesus, would you lift your hand, just hold it up high, boldly? Yes, yes, all over the room here in Newark and Hocus and Middletown, hold that hand up high, putting my faith in Jesus. Online, you can type the word faith in the comments, whichever platform you're on. And Journey, would you help me? Come on, let's give Jesus all the praise. Can we do that together?